Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has announced a new task force to reform the country's exam system. It will be led by the co-founder of IT giant Infosys, Nandan Nilekani.
Mr. Modi has also vowed to introduce stricter punishments for exam paper leaks, though a new legislation will be tabled in Parliament today. And this legislation is an amendment to an existing law passed in 2024. It proposes that investigations into paper leak cases must be completed within 2 months. Individuals found responsible will receive a jail term of between 5 to 10 years and a fine of up to 50 lakhs or $51,000. And for organized groups, it's a minimum 7 years jail with a fine of up to $1 million.
The move comes after 5 weeks of protests spearheaded by the youth-led Cockroach Janata Party. It was eventually called off on Saturday following the resignation of the nation's education minister, the main demand of the protesters. But the movement's founder, Abhijit Dipke, stresses the fight is not over yet. He said the CJP will continue until remaining demands are met. Now, these include a $103,000 compensation to families of students who committed suicide over the cancellation of a key medical exam.
The CJP also renewed calls for action against police officers who used excessive force against students during last week's march to Parliament. The demonstrations have been the most visible expression of public anger against Mr. Modi's government in recent years. And they've gained global attention after the activist Sonam Wangchuk joined last month in an indefinite hunger strike supporting the movement. He has since called off his fast.
For more, let's speak with Devesh Kapur, his Starr Foundation Professor of South Asian Studies at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. Professor Kapur, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. So after, 7 weeks, Narendra Modi folded, this movement, the CJP, has been in existence for only 10 weeks. So why did Narendra Modi fold so quickly? Because as I recall, it took farmers a year of demonstrations before they got, some of the changes to the farm laws that they were seeking.
So I think for several reasons. One is that they completely underestimated the degree of anger in India's youth at the repeated failures of national exams, which are one of the few ladders of social mobility for India's sort of lower middle class youth. And unlike sort of other times, this time the students were much more adept at shaping the narrative. They were much more creative with social media. In earlier times, the government really controlled the narrative through its control of social media, trolling, and so on. And also, the youth this time were really part of its own support base. The middle class, and especially lower middle class, have been core to Prime Minister Modi's party's support base. And their own members, children, were among the crowd. So it was much harder to dismiss them as anti-nationalists, etc., which they would do in sort of earlier times.
And Professor, the CJP, after all those efforts, seem to have a win here, but they say this is only the beginning. It has suspended its agitation in good faith, but it's still waiting for written commitments from the government. So what determines whether this becomes a lasting reform movement or returns to the streets?
I think some of the changes will take place. I think the bill that you mentioned in your introductory remarks is likely to pass. They have formed a committee to reform the exam system, which you also mentioned. So some of that is likely to happen. But I think one should understand that the exams are just one symptom of deeper discontent in India's youth, which is the lack of economic opportunities, the paucity of good jobs. And we know that's, of course, not just in India, many countries sort of around the world, young people are grappling with sort of more limited economic opportunities. And the exams will not solve that basic underlying problem. So some of the discontent will continue to simmer.
Understood.
Uh, Whether the CJP will become a more organized youth movement, that, however, remains like to be seen. The government is much more aware now, and it'll be much more sort of adept at countering it as time goes on because it'll be better prepared this time round.
I hear you. I want to just take it, from the other side. How badly do you think Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, and the BJP, his party, are going to be hit by the events, but also by the resignation of the Education Minister, Ramendra Pradhan? Everyone seems to think, this story is over, Pradhan is out. But as I understand it, Modi hasn't formally accepted his resignation yet. So is the story over?
I mean, my sense is that one of the main messages from this is that it dents the aura of invincibility that the Prime Minister had. Uh, you know, it's always been the case that they usually do not wilt under pressure. And if they do backtrack, it is after many months when the issue's salience has declined, it has been overtaken by other events, so on and so forth. This time, I think most people were caught by surprise at the relative speed with which they moved to accept the resignation of the education minister, which probably tells us that they realize that this is snowballing into a much more serious issue and needs to be nipped sort of in the bud. But it has given the opposition a fresh sort of wind after a series of losses in state elections. And so that sort of aura of invincibility, as I said, is a little bit more, there are a few more cracks now.
And India's response, Professor, it's to increase penalties, it's to accelerate prosecutions. The Prime Minister's reportedly appointed a task force to overhaul this national testing agency. Does that, in your opinion, begin to address institutional failures behind these paper leaks in the first place?
So, look, India created the National Testing Agency in 2017. This was supposed to run these high-stake exams for entrance to engineering, medicine, and so on and so forth. However, its total staffing was 39 people. Even then, those were not filled up. There were 24 people at last count. Most of these were on deputation. The rest of the staff was basically it was outsourcing. So the basic sort of capabilities of this outfit were actually quite weak. In fact, a parliamentary report last year on the NTA pointed this out, and it sort of said that its performance, and I quote, does not sort of invite sort of confidence. So its weakness was well known. I mean, if you have a organization where you pay so little attention to its basic capabilities, it's not surprising that you see sort of poor outcomes. So it's not just about exams, it's about building basic state capabilities to get better performance.
Devesh Kapur, thank you so much for your insight this Monday morning. Starr Foundation Professor of South Asia Studies at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. It's good to see you.